Hello, dear listener, and welcome to Late of the Rings, a podcast dedicated to Lord of the Rings, the card game. My name's John, and here's my co-host. He's often mistaken for dwarven women. It's the beard. It's Emery.
Good afternoon. That actually has happened before, but I don't want to talk about that night.
Oh, bad memories. Bad memories. Oh, dear. So, how are you? How have you been?
I'm not too bad. This has become a bit of a regular thing, I guess, but just in case anyone's listening out of context, we're still in the coronavirus.
Out of context.
Out of context. Is that right? Out of a time context, I think I meant. They're going to listen to this as a music podcast.
Sorry.
It might still work.
Yes.
But we're still in the throes of the coronavirus lockdown. So, as you were, lots of spare time on my hands. But it's been the same old, really. I've got rid of Sky TV.
Good for you.
So it's been about a week now where I basically don't really have much TV available in the house, which has been kind of great, actually, and quite liberating in a weird way. What it has meant, though, is I actually went back and re-watched the Hobbit films.
I'm sorry.
You know what? I'd only seen them once before in the cinema. And to be honest, I didn't really think they were that great. And I thought they were really overlong and, I don't know, just felt like it should have just been one film, really, and all of that. But you know what? Watching them again, they were actually miles better than I remembered, and I actually really quite enjoyed them.
That's great.
The 16 hours just flew by. It was. I didn't watch the extended ones. I mean,
it's amazing what you can find enjoyable when you can't leave the house.
Yeah, if I've got no television, there's nothing to do. I'm not allowed to leave. Okay, and I've got access to free Hobbit films. They're great.
I enjoyed the Hobbit films to the point that I enjoyed spending more time in Peter Jackson's Middle Earth, but I completely agree that it was overlong. It should be just one film for one enjoyable short story. And 3 films, too much.
Yeah, I actually totally agree. But I still think they're good films, looking at them again.
Okay.
I think they were a bit disappointing, I think, the first time. But watching them again, it was, lots of fun. And some of the things I thought were really kind of long and boring and drawn out too much. Actually, looking at them again, I think that's how I just remembered them, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do totally. Yeah, maybe they're worth a rewatch for me as well then. I mean, the thing is, it's a tough act to follow, isn't it? After Lord of the Rings, which is quite possibly one of the greatest works of cinema of all time.
Well, and that's in context.
Indeed.
So I thought I'd go the whole shebang. So I started watching those as well. So I watched The Fellowship of the Ring.
Traditional. Start with the first one.
Yeah, I think that's the best way. And and I hadn't seen it for years actually, and it's just unbelievable. It's even better than I remembered it, actually, watching it again. So that's what I've been doing for the last week. Quite Lord of the Rings focused for the last week.
Very nice way to spend your time, if you ask me.
How about your good self?
Well, also very Lord of the Rings focused. I've been editing a podcast of epic proportions. Yeah, last episode was quite the mammoth job. But it turned out all right in the end.
We could have split that into 3 podcasts of equal length.
Yeah.
Just to flesh it out.
No, but it was fine. And other than that, I've been playing more of the game, which is great. And just generally being inside, which I don't mind. Anyway, speaking of which, shall we crack on with today's show?
Let's do it.
Alrighty. So today we're going to be having a sort of general discussion of difficulty in general for the core set quests. And after that, we're going to be recounting our attempts at questing through Escape from Dol Guldur, the third and final quest in the core set. And then we'll have our fact of the week and all manner of other good stuff. But first, before we get on with that, we have another core set card to discuss. That's right, we covered all the spheres, but there's one card we missed out.
Which is?
Well, if I told you he had a long beard and a pointy hat.
Dumbledore?
No, it's so Gandalf. Yeah, because of Gandalf. Gandalf, as I think everyone knows, is a neutral card from the core set. So we never really discussed him. I mean, he got plenty of mentions, mostly whenever other cards cost 5. He would get a certain mention from me saying, "Don't be ridiculous, play Gandalf." But I think, yeah, of course. I mean, this is the main man. We really can't not discuss this card. So before we crack on with the main body of the show, let's have a quick look at this guy. So, Gandalf. He is a neutral ally. He has a cost of 5. He has willpower of 4. He'll hit for 4. He'll defend for 4. And he has 4 hit points. He should really cost 4 if you ask me. But
then you'd hate all of the cards that cost 4.
Good point. So it's Gandalf. He is an Istari. And it says, at the end of the round, discard Gandalf from play. Boo. But he has a response. After Gandalf enters play, choose one. Either draw 3 cards, deal 4 damage to one enemy in play, or reduce your threat by 5. So, what is there really to say about this guy?
He's good.
Okay, moving on.
He's good.
No, Gandalf is just obviously brilliant. And, I mean, when you first see him, you think, okay, well, the uses for him are manifold and he is expensive. But actually, because he's neutral, if you really need Gandalf, you only have to wait 2 rounds and hope you don't need any other cards to come out, and then you can afford him because you'll be able to pay for him from all your heroes pools. And yeah, he can be a lifesaver for obvious reasons.
Yeah, totally. And there are so many different uses for Gandalf. There's so many different scenarios that he's so helpful in. I think it's probably folly to go through all of them. But I guess there's a few favourites. I think when you mentioned him before, at one point you were talking about sneak attack, for example.
Oh yeah, classic.
So that took me a while to figure out how powerful that was. And the reason it's great is not only can you use Gandalf's 4 willpower or hits for 4, defense 4 in an attack or a quest, which is obviously immensely powerful, but then you get his response as well. And if he survives for a round, you get him back into your hand. So you can essentially deal 4 damage one time you bring him out, and then deal 4 damage again next time you bring him out, or reduce your threat, whatever it is. You can trigger that response a couple of times or multiple times if you have multiple sneak attacks. So yeah, that's a great combo. And I think it's one we mentioned before, but it sounds like it's a bit of a classic one from what you were saying.
Yeah,
the other week.
I think so. I mean, I use Gandalf obviously as much as possible, and I think you said that the Learn to Play book suggests just putting 1 copy of him in each of the starter decks. But let's be honest, you want to be putting 3 of these guys in your deck every time. You want to be seeing Gandalf as often as possible. One of the responses I don't really use that often, which is strange for me, is the drawing of 3 cards. That doesn't seem quite as powerful as the other 2. I mean, dealing 4 damage to an enemy can, because it's direct damage, bypassing any defense, can really save your skin. And, as can reducing your threat by 5, either to stop an engagement or, in fact, to stop you threatening out and losing the game. So, yeah, it's Gandalf.
I have used that one, drawing 3 cards, but yeah, you're right, not as often as dealing 4 damage or reducing your threat. I tend to do those 2 more. I guess the only other way to bring him in is using stand and fight. No, sorry, I forgot. It doesn't.
Oh, we're gonna have to cut that because that.
I think we should leave it.
That is gonna confuse far too many people.
The ticking time bomb. No, you can't use stand and fight with Gandalf because he's neutral. End of story. Sorry, I'm being facetious. But yeah, I agree with you. I put 3 of so far when I've played this. I think every single deck I've put together, I've put 3 Gandalfs in.
Yeah, I don't think we need to spend too much more time on him. I mean, he will get more and more mentions, as we talk about quests. So, yeah, we got to him eventually. But just like this podcast, a wizard is never late.
Exactly. Actually, that's a line I've used many times in my professional life.
Is this because you have been late many times?
No, never. Weren't you listening?
Good point. Good point. Okay, so that's Gandalf. So, as I mentioned before, the main thing I want to talk about with you today is the difficulty of the game, because what I read on the forums a lot for new players is people hitting a brick wall almost immediately once they get the core set and start playing. The difficulty factor of this game really tends to hit you full in the face. And we've already discussed it when we've been talking about the individual quests, about whether or not we think they're too hard or too soft. But without spoiling any of the specific quest cards, I'm just curious what your thoughts are of the 3 quests packaged in with the core set. Do you feel that the difficulty level set by Fantasy Flight was right, or do you think it's too restrictive for new players?
Well, that's quite... I guess I can only answer that from the way I approached it. So I'm not sure whether this will be in common with most of the people listening to this or not. Maybe not, actually. But I think I alluded to one of the previous episodes that I'd never really played this kind of card game before. I don't know whether there's any games similar to this, really, to be honest. I'm not someone who's played a bunch of card games or anything like that. So to me, the difficulty in the quests was completely coupled with just the difficulty of learning a whole new game and a whole new approach to playing a game. Yeah, most of my game playing before had been, board games with the family and the odd card game here and there, and that was pretty much it. So it was so the two things are kind of coupled together for me. So it's a little bit difficult to gauge whether the actual quests themselves are too difficult or too easy or what have you. What I will say is I found, and especially with hindsight, I guess, having played a few more quests after the core set, I think the first quest is pretty much perfect, because you're going to learn all the basic mechanics. How do you play the game in a basic way from that one quest?
Yeah, I agree. I think that initial quest, A Passage Through Mirkwood, is actually pitch perfect with its difficulty level. I like the fact that it, as you say, it will teach all the basics of what you need to be able to play the game without overcomplicating things. And I also like the fact that it isn't an instant win. You will probably lose that first quest the first couple of times of attempting it until you get your head around how the game works. And that's a good thing, because if you didn't have that, then that would just be almost a throwaway quest. And you remember, you're only getting 3 quests with the core set. And I think there does need to be a certain challenge with all 3 of them. So for me, A Passage Through Mirkwood, I think, is exactly the right level of difficulty for an introductory quest.
Yeah, I mean, I did actually win it, I think, on my second go, but only because I'd cheated massively without realising it. But no, it did take me a few goes to win it properly the first time. And it took me ages, because each time I was learning, what was the correct order of things, or how do these things work together? And so it did take a long time. So I think if you mixed in any kind of deeper mechanics or different elements of gameplay into that quest, it would probably be quite overwhelming, I think. So yeah, I agree with you. I think that's pretty much perfect. And the other thing I'll say for it is, as we've sort of gone back and played these core sets through in the last couple of weeks, actually, it's not a gimme, Passage Through Mirkwood. There are still some nasty cards in there, and you can come a cropper actually playing that quest. So it's not like you can put some super powered deck together from later on, I guess, and just walk through it.
But absolutely. I mean,
if you use your core set,
just for fun, I've made some crazy decks and just blasted through it in 2 rounds. It's quite fun.
3 rounds.
No, I think there are ways to do it in less than that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because you it's possible to defeat It's possible to,
no spoilers.
Okay, it's possible to defeat more than one quest card in one round.
Right. I was like, for time, I want a chess game in 2 moves. Genuinely, that could be a little puzzle teaser for people to go away and figure out. That's genuinely bona fide game, 1 and 2 in 2 moves. So I think you've done something similar there to.
So I think we're both in agreement then that A Passage Through Mirkwood is pitch perfect actually with its difficulty level. Oh, by the way, we're not going to mention what Fantasy Flight rate these difficulties as because they are notoriously all over the place.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah. So I think we're just going to basically ignore that and just discuss the difficulty in broader strokes. So, Journey Along the Anduin. Now, as I think most people are aware, I struggled with this when coming back to it for the podcast. Basically until I constructed a deck which could beat it fairly easily, but I really had to think it through again. It certainly wasn't a case of just grabbing the deck that I'd used for A Passage Through Mirkwood and then I could sail through that one because I now know how to play the game better. That quest really, really gave me some problems.
Yeah. I remember, and I think I might have mentioned this when we went through that quest last time, which was the first time I played it. And, well, again, I guess we're not going to give away kind of any details here. But what happens right off the bat made me think, oh my God, how am I going to do this? This is impossible. So you've eventually got through Passage Through Mirkwood, where it teaches you how the game works, but then it does teach you a little bit about the spheres as well. You do have to think about that as you sort of play it through. But then the challenge that's presented right at the beginning of Journey Along the Anduin is, at first it's like, oh, blimey, is this what this game is now? It's like, so you taught me the basics, now we're going to throw something at you. And when I first looked at it, I was thinking, oh, God, I don't have a clue how to figure this out. But that really made me then start to think about how you put a deck together. So I think using those sort of pre-configured decks you mentioned earlier, which come in the how to play or learn to play guide, I think once you've passed that first quest, I can't really see how they're going to work with Journey Along the Anduin or Dol Guldur. So
they're just not, I think.
Yeah. So for me, I think it was, if the first quest was about teaching you the basics of the game and an introduction to the spheres, for me, the second quest is really about how you overcome specific challenges and how you put together decks with different abilities, the cards with different abilities, to be able to do something which you wouldn't think you'd be able to do. So it makes you think about how the cards work together and what kind of control you can have over the situation. I think once I'd learnt that, to be honest, I've only figured out one way to beat it using the core set cards. But
you should definitely go back and try again then. I mean, it's not for me to tell you how to get enjoyment out of the game, but as you could see from the deck that I used compared to the deck that you used, it does show that there are many ways to skin that particular cat. So I think there is benefit to go back and try and beat it in different ways.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I've maybe not for that particular quest, but there have been other quests and in the further APs in the next cycle, which I've done as well, where I've gone back and done it using, a couple of, if I've done it, let's say with leadership and spirit, maybe I'll go back and try it with tactics and lore or something like that. I think there's definite value in doing that, for sure.
Well, I think actually that's the key word, value, right there, because what I think is important to remember is that when you buy the core set, you get a bunch of player cards and you get only 3 quests. And if they were all easy to beat, then I would think there'd be more complaints that actually it's not very good value. Because, yes, sure, you get your cards, but you just get 3 quests which you sail through. And if that was the case, I think people would be less inclined to continue playing the game with the APs and the deluxe sets, because you'd be going, well, this game is easy. I'm just going to be able to sail through it. Well, actually, I had my core set. I think I played for sort of 6 months before I bought an AP, just constructing different decks, trying to find new and interesting ways to beat the quests in there. because they weren't just walks in the park. So actually, I think the fact that they are quite difficult sort of genuinely adds value to what you're getting in that core set, which leads me on to the third quest, which, again, we're going to discuss without spoilers. We'll move on to our actual experiences after this. But Escape from Dol Guldur. Now, I don't think it's any secret that this is the quest where people go, well, I bought the core set, I only get 3 quests, and it's impossible to beat the third one. I kind of went into this with my eyes open when I got the core set, and I kind of knew that this was the general consensus, but I don't think I was quite ready for just how difficult that third quest is as a solo player. And I think this is the conclusion I've come to with this. I don't think when Fantasy Flight put this game together originally that they ever conceived it as a purely solo game. It happens that the solo players embraced it, and actually it is by far, in my opinion, the best solo game on planet Earth. But I think at the time of their first production of it, I think they believed it was a two-player cooperative game at its heart. So the difficulty ramps up from Quest 1 to Quest 2 in 2-player, but also works beautifully in 1-player. But Escape from Dol Guldur, I actually think is nigh on impossible as a 1-player experience. But I don't think we should be putting the blame onto Fantasy Flight here for making a game that is too difficult. I just think they didn't quite perceive how the game would be played.
But is it a problem? Is that something that people have, I don't know, complained about, or
I think
perception about?
Well, I think the problem is that Lord of the Rings, the card game, has now found its place as one of the best solo games there is. So a lot of people just play it solo. I mean, that's how I play it the majority of the time, and then I play it with you as and when we can. But for most of the time, I play it as a solo game, and I know that that's where a lot of people get their enjoyment from because it is such a good solo experience. So because it gained this reputation of being such a great solo game, a lot of solo players picked up the core set and found that they couldn't beat 1/3 of the quests that are supplied with it.
Yeah, I mean, my experience of this one is, it's when you play on your own, it's rock hard. It's really, really hard. But when
is it rock hard or is it impossible? I mean, it's not necessarily okay. Maybe that is.
Well,
I mean, I'm talking with cards from the core set.
Yeah. Well, first, just before going to that, what I will say is the impression I got from this one, just as I thought the second quest was built around overcoming obstacles and figuring out how spheres work together and putting together decks, the impression I got from this was how to play 2-player and how to create 2 decks which are going to, so not rather than 2 spheres in one deck, but 2 separate decks which are going to work well together, and how you play a quest with potentially 4 different spheres out there. That's the impression I got in terms of what it's trying to achieve. And then I think that's kind of, well, I don't know whether it's confirmed or not, but in my mind, I think just the fact that this is such a struggle, as you say, 1 player, but we've played this together, I think 3 times in total, twice just this past weekend. We're going to talk about those experiences shortly. But then one time also was one of the first times I ever played a few months ago. And I think playing 2-player, we've beaten it 3 out of 3 times.
Yeah, we have. Yeah.
So that straight away for me is some kind of evidence. What I found playing this solo though, in just using the core set cards, is there have been sometimes I've done it where it's just been overwhelming, as oh my god, I'm just dead. Or you just quickly figure out that you're going to fail. But you normally try and see it through anyway. But it have been a couple of times where I've got tantalizing, or in my mind, tantalizingly close. And that, for me, means I've got to the last quest card, which means approaching the finishing line. But I never did it. I never did it solo, and that was very much a rarity. Getting near the end, getting some way through the last quest card was very much. I think I'd literally twice.
Well, I think from what you're saying is actually you're sort of agreeing with my point that when they conceived these quests, they didn't really conceive it as a wholly 1-player experience, which it's not. But it certainly has found that solo audience, and I think they realize this very quickly moving on, and there are only a handful of other quests that come later which really aren't as full an experience as a solo game as they would be in multiplayer. But this one, I think you're probably right, was designed to sort of show how two decks work together in order to overcome the quest. And I think the only problem comes when you then later down the road build a reputation as being a brilliant solo game. You don't want to remove this quest from the core set because, this is the third quest, and it's legendary.
It's a challenge, right? I mean,
yeah, it certainly is a challenge, but I just think you should be going into it with your eyes open. If you are looking for a solo experience, there is a 90 to 99% chance you are not going to be able to beat that final quest with the core set cards.
Yeah, I've never looked it up online or anything like that, but I'm certain that there will be some people out there who've done this, who've completed this.
Oh, there are.
Just
there
using
are.
the core set.
There are, yeah.
So it must, I guess you need some luck, and you need to pick pretty much some. There's probably a very small combination of decks you can put together to really get into it, or some. I don't know, but I think that there must be a way. Is what I'm saying.
Well, there certainly is, but if you do look online, what you'll find these decks which are put together with a certain collection of heroes, and then they'll say something like, unless, I'm trying not to give away spoilers. They come with some sort of prerequisites that, as in, if during setup, if X, Y, and Z doesn't happen, then you should just start again. Now, that is not how I want to play this game. I don't know.
I know what you mean. Or I guess what you're saying is, if X, Y, and Z happens, it makes it more of a challenge. But rather than say if X, Y, and Z happens, it makes it impossible. That's for. Is that what you're trying to say?
But pretty much it does make it impossible.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's the thing. And so basically you mentioned, there must be some decks out online that can beat this quest solo with just core set cards. And there are. But then they state up front, but if this happens during setup, swipe your board and start again.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. So you need for luck as well. And not just there, there'll be different parts throughout the game where you need some serious luck to go for you, I should imagine, for this to work as a one player.
Yeah.
Those couple of occasions, I have got that last card and got some way through that last quest card. I did have a lot of luck. The right things came out of the deck and the right shadow cards, and all of that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's a tough nut to crack, let's say that.
It certainly is. And we'll wind this section up in a second. But I would like to say I don't think it is too difficult.
No,
but it's blatantly designed as a two-player experience, that third quest. So if you are, as I was, coming to this game as a purely solo experience when I first started out, I think you just have to draw a line under it. And as did I played the first two quests over and over and over again, and then I'd occasionally play the third one. And then I eventually just drew a line under it and went, okay, I'm just going to get some more APs until I can play this two-player. And then I did with you, and we beat it first time.
Or can you, and I've never done this, actually, are you allowed to do this in a game? Are you allowed to use two decks on your own?
Yeah.
In one player?
Well, there are no rules. Yes, of course you can. You can basically, it's what's known as playing double-fisted. You wipe that smirk off your face.
You reminded me of that Dwarf Night again. Anyway, go on.
And that's basically you as one player can play acting as two players. Now, I never do this, but I'm certainly not against it. If that's how you get more enjoyment out of playing the game, then go ahead. For me, it's just too much going on. You have to remember who is technically the first player. Is it your left hand or your right hand? And
left fist or right fist.
Exactly. So
yeah, I can imagine it getting quite. I guess for you probably need a fair bit of space as well.
That's
just
for sure.
From a practical point of view to play it.
And of course, you take away that sort of certain element of not really knowing what's in each other's hands, and because
Sorry, that's why I was going to say I wasn't sure whether it was something that's allowed, because I guess if you play 2-player, there's only so much you're allowed to say to each other. But if you're playing 1 player with 2 hands, you automatically by default know everything.
Yeah,
So it's a different level of difficulty.
for sure. And like I say, it's not for me, but I know there are plenty of players out there that play like this. And sure, if you enjoy the game like that, then go for it. And actually, you'll see on forums when talking about Escape from Dol Guldur that most people's sort of go-to answer is try and beat it double-fisted.
It might be, yeah. So it's a way to do it. So at least if you did that, even if you were playing solo and you were getting frustrated and just wanted to beat it, maybe that's a good option. And will also, if you haven't played 2-player before, might teach you some of the dynamics of that 2-player mode.
And yeah, maybe you'll love playing that way, and then you'll go,
Yeah.
actually, I'm going to play all my games like this, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's the great thing about these sort of games is you can make your own fun.
I'm kind of tempted to give it a go now because I've never really thought of it before. So,
So, just in conclusion, then about the this sort of discussion on difficulty, I actually think it's pretty much spot on. I mean, I do think the ramp up from a passage through Mirkwood into Journey Along the Anduin is shockingly steep, but I kind of love that. I love that idea that you have a kind of pretty difficult introductory quest, and then, boom, welcome to the game.
yeah, I mean, I've never really thought about it was right or wrong or whether before, but all I'll say about that is with the level of difficulty they were, playing that core set solo, it kept me completely absorbed and got me really into the game. So I think from that perspective, I think they've nailed it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's basically what I was saying earlier. The fact that the difficulty level is set quite high, pretty high, really made me want to stick at playing this game and really made me want to get better at it. Because, winning is fun, but isn't it more enjoyable to become better and experience the game more?
So what you're saying, John, is for taking part that counts.
Oh, God, no.
I think that's what you just said.
Oh, then that's getting cut.
You take it back.
Then that's getting...
No, it's not the be-all and end-all, but yeah, I know what you're saying.
Okay, no, I think we discussed that enough, and I mean difficulty is going to come up with each game we play, so I think this is not the last time this subject's going to be mentioned. But I think it's time we talk about our experiences. I mean, we've mentioned it a lot, so I think it's time it's a time we attempted to escape from Dol Guldur.
Talking of difficulty.
Hello, listener. The following section contains spoilers from the quest Escape from Dol Guldur. If you wish to avoid these spoilers, please skip forward to 1 hour and 22 minutes. Thank you. So, as we mentioned, we attempted this together in preparation for this podcast with the wonders of modern technology. We were able to do that in different houses. But did you attempt to play it on your own before we did that, Em?
Oh, yeah. So I had tried it a while back when I first properly started playing this in January. Once I got past the Anduin, I did try Dol Guldur a couple of times, but just a couple of times before I think we discussed it, and you were saying it's almost impossible. We might want to sort of move on. But then going back to it, I did try it a fair few times solo. And like I just mentioned earlier, there were a couple of times where I thought I was doing pretty well, but generally I fell pretty far short doing it solo. And I tried all manner of different combinations of things, and there was always one weakness too many, and it was really tough.
Well,
I really like it though. It's a great quest. I really like this one.
Well, I didn't even bother attempting it on my own. I've already been bitten by that dog.
You've been there before.
Oh, that wag has already taken a chunk out of me. I am not going back down that road. So, shall we just set the scene then for this quest? Shall we have a little look at quest card 1?
Yeah. Do you want me to read it out?
Yep, go ahead.
So the first part of the quest is called the Necromancer's Tower. So what it says here is, the Lady Galadriel of Lorien has asked you to investigate the area in the vicinity of Dol Guldur. While doing so, one of your allies was ambushed by orcs, captured, and is now held in a dungeon cell. Nasty stuff.
That doesn't sound good.
Not good. Setup. Well, some people are into that kind of thing. Setup. Search the encounter deck for the 3 objective cards, and we'll talk about these in a minute. Reveal and place them in the staging area. Also, place the Nazgul of Dol Guldur face up, but out of play alongside the quest deck. Then shuffle the encounter deck and attach 1 encounter to each objective. So you end up with 3 guarded objectives.
Yeah, and I think that last line is essentially just reminding people from the rulebook what the guarded keyword means, because it's the first time we've ever had a guarded card come off the encounter deck. So, in case you don't know, if a card has guarded on it, then a second encounter card basically sits on top of it, and you have to defeat that encounter card to be able to sort of release whatever is guarded. Okay, there's one thing I want to just mention, though, on this setup, which I think is very important, and actually maybe we should have put this before we dived into the spoiler warnings. But, well, people will get here eventually. And that's the wording on the Nazgul card, because this is something which Fantasy Flight learnt their lesson on very quickly. Because in the setup there, it says you must place the Nazgul of Dol Guldur face up, but out of play. And the reason why it says face up is there is text on the Nazgul card which is kind of always in play, but the card itself is out of play. Now, I'll just read what that says. I mean, we'll come to the Nazgul in a minute. But basically, the text which is important is forced. When the prisoner is rescued, move Nazgul of Dol Guldur into the staging area. Now, that's on the Nazgul card. So basically, something is going to happen in the game whilst you're playing, and then you are meant to constantly remember that this card says that in order to bring it into play into the staging area, which is insanely badly designed. I mean, they did learn their mistake immediately. I mean, what they do now, anything that brings a card which you've been told to put out of play into play is now written clearly on the quest card, or indeed another encounter card which would be in play at that time. So you're not forced to sort of remember, oh, I've taken this card out, but when X, Y, or Z happens, I have to go and find it and then dig it out of the ground where I left it. So, I mean, I think it's so easy to forget to bring the Nazgul in because of where that condition is written. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe.
No, well, I mean, in my experience, you're not wrong, because even though I'd played this quest a couple of times, as I said, back in January or February, whenever it was, when I went back to this last week, I was storming through it. I'd got through the second quest card, got to the third and final quest card.
I know where this is going.
I am absolutely flying through this. It's like, I'm going to go down in history. I was so excited. I thought, I'm going to tell just the first time I've tried this since really properly learning the game, and I'm going to defeat the legendary Escape from Dol Guldur on my first go. And after about a couple of rounds on the last card, so when is this Nazgul? I was expecting something in the encounter deck, right, to say the Nazgul turns up or whatever, or something like this.
Well, exactly, and actually, that's how the game is constructed.
Yeah,
nowadays.
And then I read the card, and I thought, well, I've just wasted an hour of my life. I was gutted. So yes, well done, Fantasy Flight, for learning from that.
Yeah,
that was very confusing.
Terrible design. And like I say, perhaps we should have put this before the spoiler thing so that people coming to it were already aware, but they'll soon learn.
They can suffer too.
So we sort of got ahead of ourselves there, but that's side A of quest card 1. So let's flip that bad boy over.
Okay, and I guess we'll talk about the individual objectives in a minute.
Yeah.
So when you flip it over, it's you need 9 progress to complete this. When revealed, randomly select one hero card among all the heroes controlled by the players and turn it face down. So if you're playing solo, you've got 3. I mean, don't play this with only 2 heroes. It's going to be very difficult. So that hero is now considered a prisoner, cannot be used, cannot be damaged, and does not collect resources until it is rescued as instructed by card effects later in this quest. The players as a group cannot play more than 1 ally card each round. That's another very important thing to remember.
That's brutal.
Brutal. Players cannot advance to the next stage of this quest unless they have at least 1 objective card.
Okay, so let's have a look at those objectives then.
Yeah. I guess when you first look at this, by the way, I guess for sort of first time players or somebody who only plays once or twice, there's a lot going on here.
Oh, yeah. Talk about ramping up the level of detail of things you've got to be aware of. From Journey Along the Anduin to this one, it's like, okay, you thought you'd learned all the mechanics? Here you go.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Massive setup. And again, that makes it even more critical to understand that Nazgul card, which you correctly mentioned. So you've got these objectives in play. You've got to collect one of them. You've lost a hero. So yeah, so a lot. I was like, what has happened here? Okay, so there's 3 objectives. Shall I just read through them, or?
Yeah, see, well, it's interesting, these objectives, because, as I said, they're all guarded. So there'll be an enemy or a location, or if you're lucky, by the way, you'll reveal a treachery during setup to put on this, because chances are that treachery won't do you any damage, and therefore you have 1 card which isn't guarded straight off the bat. So basically, if you have a guarded objective, as I mentioned, once you either defeat the enemy which is guarding it or explore the location which is protecting it, you can then claim that objective. And there's nearly always some sort of clause for how you do so. And I was thinking about these ones, and I was thinking, at first I was thinking, oh God, they're just so sort of random, and their clauses don't really represent what they are. And then I reread them again just before coming on to do this podcast, and I thought, actually, no, maybe I've spoken too soon. So do you want to maybe just read them through?
Yeah, sure. So it's not in any particular order, just random. The first one I've got in my hand is Gandalf's map. This item, it's guarded as we discussed, and it's restricted. So that means when somebody picks this up, they can only have 1 other restricted attachment on their hero. Action, raise your threat by 2 to claim this objective when it's free of encounters. When claimed, attach Gandalf's map to a hero you control. Counts as an attachment. If detached, return Gandalf's map to the staging area. Attached hero cannot attack or defend. So that's going to be the theme of all 3 of these. There's going to be some kind of nastiness which happens because of the effects of each one. So that one you can't attack or defend.
Yeah, so thematically on this, like I say, at first I was thinking these objectives, they're not thematic in the slightest. But I guess with this one, it's not too bad. It obviously takes 2 hands to hold this map. So you're not attacking and defending.
Well, for me, it's somebody who's, telling you the way to go. They're the navigator, aren't they? They got the map. Other people are doing the fighting as you're trying to find your way through this sort of dark corridors of Dol Guldur. That's the way I see it. I think that one works fine, and cannot attack or defend kind of works. So you can quest, basically, is what we're saying.
Basically, your mum's in the passenger seat reading the map whilst your dad is driving.
Correct. Yeah, Mum cannot drive at that point.
No.
That would be treacherous, indeed. So the second one I have is Dungeon Torch. So this is all the text on all 3 of these is the same until you get to the forced action. So it's again guarded, restricted. You have to raise your threat by 2 to claim it. At the end of each round, raise attached hero's controller's threat by 2. So when I first read this, I thought that meant once you claimed this, instead of putting your threat up by 1 during the refresh phase, you put it up by 2. But actually, it means you put it up by 3.
Yeah, because I do understand that there's confusion there because it is also happening at the end of each round, but that is on top of your regular threat increase. And again, like I say, maybe I was being a bit harsh when I was thinking about the themes of these things, but this kind of makes sense as well. So if you've got a torch, you're obviously going to be drawing more attention to yourself, so therefore your threat increases, you're going to be drawing in more enemies around you.
Exactly. The last one's the Shadow Key. So again, exactly the same. Guarded, restricted, raise your threat by 2 to claim it. The forced effect is at the end of each round, the attached hero suffers 1 damage. So this is some nasty evil object which is slowly draining your
Yeah, it's,
life force
it's
away.
smoking black.
Like smoke shadow.
If you have a key which is smoking black shadows, don't pick it up.
Yeah.
That's my advice. That is not going to open anything you want it to, I tell you. Okay, so these are the objectives, and they're sat in the staging area, and we need to get at least one of them to get off of this first quest card.
Yeah.
Okay, that doesn't seem too bad, apart from we've lost a hero, and we can only play one ally at a time.
Correct. I think, but there are a couple of treacheries, probably just worth mentioning, that do come as the guarded. Well, I think there's probably 1 or 2 more which might have a small effect, but
Oh, go ahead.
I think there are 2 which can have an effect, and these are treacheries we've seen before.
Okay.
On Passage Through Mirkwood. One is Eyes of Forest. When revealed, each player discards all event cards in his hand.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So if you get that one on one of these, then you have to get rid of all of your event cards. And you'll have probably, very unlikely you'll have any way to cancel it, because you won't have any resource to spend your 6 cards on. You might have a hero you can exhaust, I guess. Can you exhaust a hero during setup?
Yeah.
Okay, so you'll be able to. Okay, so might be able to cancel it. And then the second, the second one is Caught in a Web. When revealed, the player with the highest threat level attaches this card to one of his heroes. Counts as a condition attachment with the text: "Attached hero does not ready during the refresh phase unless you pay 2 resources from that hero's pool." Now that one can be a really nasty one to get off the bat,
Oh, yeah.
because you've got to get 2 resources before you can even use that hero to do anything apart from collect resources. So so bear that in mind. So yeah, most of the treacheries are what you want to see as a guarded on these objectives, apart from you probably get away with Eyes of Forest, but Caught in the Web is the one I think you want to avoid.
Yeah, unless you want to get my dwarf friend in there. I forgot what he's called again now, but get him out, play him. Minor of the
Iron Hills.
Minor of the Iron Hills. Get him out straight away. Get that condition attachment off. I mean, I did neglect to put him in my deck, but I've learned that lesson.
We still did it.
Yeah, but even though we did it the first time and we said, well, we'll play one more time, and even though I'd been caught in a web that very go, I didn't go, hang on a minute, I'll just swap out these dwarves for the Minor of the Iron Hills. Nope, we'll just go straight in again.
It worked.
Outdone by my own stupidity. Okay, so you'd think this is not too tough because it's only 9 quest points on this card, but that missing hero can really, really hurt you. And I don't think we'll keep banging on about how difficult this is if you try and play it 1 player, because we've certainly covered that. But just to imagine, if you've lost a hero, it's going to be nigh on impossible to quest enough and fight enough to be able to get past this card and proceed with any real gusto.
I was able to do this a couple of times without being ridiculously decimated, but you really need the luck to go your way, and then you're probably still going to end up suffering a bit later in the game anyway, because those cards which you wanted to avoid are coming later.
Yeah, so. Exactly. I think from now on we'll just presume you are playing this 2-player.
Okay.
But we did struggle a bit. I mean, just to get through this, I think it's because you have to really communicate about which ally you can bring out, because as a group, we can only bring out 1 ally per round. And that takes quite some thought, and some tactics are involved here of knowing the right time to bring out the right hero, because there are some pretty nasty guys out there that can really slow you down.
Yeah, I mean, is it worth just saying as well that what this is talking about when it says you can only play 1 ally, that's during the planning phase where you're playing, at the same time you're playing attachments, etc. You can bring other allies into play through card effects.
Yeah, because then you wouldn't be playing the ally, you would be playing the event, for instance, which would then bring an ally into play, which is that difference.
Right, exactly. So that's one thing to bear in mind for for new players. I think if you do have something like I don't know, like a stand and fight, for example, you could use that to bring out an additional ally.
Sneak attack.
Or sneak attack is another one. I can't remember if there's any more in the core set, but yeah. Anyway, there's a couple of ways you can do it.
Yeah. I wouldn't rely on it though.
No. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's happened each time we played. So to be honest, I couldn't really remember the very first time we played it way back, which was literally like the second game I'd ever had on this.
Oh, that was nice of me, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Play this game. It's quite fun, isn't it? Right, sit down.
I think
we're playing Escape from Dol Guldur.
I think we did the core set. I think that was why we did it. I think we did all three.
Yeah, that's likely. Yeah.
But yes, I think as you were alluding to earlier, I think what we're finding on here was you were getting to a point fairly quickly where it's like, oh my goodness, this could get overwhelming any second now. And then we just managed to get over the crest of that wave and then seemed to sort of take a bit more control of the game. I think that's what happened both times.
Yeah.
We played this week together.
Yeah.
Both times we defeated it. That was the same experience, I think.
Yeah, because I think, I mean, like you say, the encounter cards actually from the Dol Guldur set aren't that bad. I mean, there are a couple of nasty enemies. I mean, there's a Nazgul in it. But we'll come to those in a moment. But the cards which you have to bundle in with that, which is basically the Spiders of Mirkwood, and I think the
orcs one?
Yeah, the orcs from Dol Guldur. There are some really nasty guys in there. I mean, we've already spoken about them in previous episodes, but like Chieftain Ulftak is in there. The Beastmaster is in there. I think
Ungoliant Spawn.
Yeah, I was going to say, didn't we get Ungoliant Spawn as a surge from during setup? So we ended up with three guarded objectives, and one of those had surge on it. So we got Ungoliant Spawn for good measure, just before we'd even lifted a finger.
And we've got an old favourite of yours and mine, the Hummerhorns.
Oh yeah, we got the Hummerhorns. We got the Hummerhorns from the first round as well. So that was just a race against the clock.
Just had to sit there.
Yeah, so like I say, even though there aren't that many particularly nasty enemies or locations in the Dol Guldur set itself, the other enemies that come along for the ride, So,
and we've got our favourite Necromancer's Reach.
Oh, that's your favourite.
Yeah,
I don't understand how one treachery can cause you so much grief so many times.
Although, having said that, in the last game, it was you who was more in. We had to get rid of cards. We'll talk about this in a minute. Put them because we were scared of Necromancer's Reach killing your characters rather than mine. If you recall.
Absolutely, we were in trouble, and I was playing with Denethor. I was basically playing with the same deck that I played with for Journey Along the Anduin, and it was basically okay. We were using Denethor at the end of each round to see what was coming next, and then there was Necromancer's Reach. It's like no. To the bottom of the deck, but it's like, well, no, maybe we can survive. Put it at the bottom of the deck.
It's just horrible in every way. But yeah.
Okay, so let's say that we did get past the first card. So what happens next?
I like the artwork on that card as well, by the way.
Oh, I don't even.
The Necromancer's Tower. It looks menacing. It doesn't look like somewhere you want to go. It's like, come on, Galadriel.
Oh yeah, no, but I do have a bone to pick about this. I've got a few things about this quest that I actually dislike, and I was going to wait till the conclusion for this, but I will jump straight to this one. So the first two quests in the core set, we have an urgent message for Lady Galadriel, so we have to take it through the passage through Mirkwood, and then that basically continues directly onto Journey Along the Anduin, where we have to continue taking our message to Lady Galadriel. And then the beginning of this one, let me just read it here one more time. Lady Galadriel Lorien has asked you to investigate the area in the vicinity of Dol Guldur. No, but hang on. We were just bringing you a message. We've got things to get back to. And now it's just like, could you just go and investigate the vicinity of Dol Guldur? It doesn't wash with me, that. I mean, I like the fact that we've got there. We never found out what that message was, but now go to Dol Guldur. I think it's a little bit of a stretch.
Are you saying that you would refuse the good lady's request?
I would try, and then she would look at me with those eyes.
Exactly, start crying.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going.
Okay. Dol Guldur, you say? It's lovely this time of year.
Wonderful service in the tower.
Yeah, okay, so that's beef number one. That's actually not my biggest beef with this quest, but
Okay.
let's move on to quest card number 2.
I'd like to officially put it on the record that I don't have any beef with Lady Galadriel. Just in case.
It has been noted.
Okay, so we've got through that one. We've claimed one of the objectives. Might be worth saying, well, actually, I guess it depends on your deck and your situation. I've tended to, when I was playing one player, I always wanted to get Gandalf's map because it wouldn't do damage and it wouldn't raise your threat. And I'd just put that on somebody who just quests. Like if I had Eowyn in my hand, I'd put it on Eowyn, for example.
Yeah, for sure. Gandalf's map is by far the least negative of all the objectives. The only thing is, I said we weren't going to talk about trying to do this one player. If you are playing this one player, to only have 2 heroes and then suddenly one of them can't fight could be a real problem. But yeah, in a 2-player game, for sure, it's definitely the right one to pick up first.
Yeah. If you've got a Gimli who's, you manage to get some armor on him or something, this actually might not be a bad way just to bump him up a bit, but you have to bear in mind you have to have a way to be able to reduce it if you want to start fighting with him. And obviously, if you haven't got a way to reduce it, he will die after X amount of rounds. Another thing to bear in mind, so Shadow Key adds one damage at the end of each round. So if you've got Gimli, that's going to make him hit for 1 more each time. But obviously you need to keep him alive.
That's a risk. That's a risk.
Here you go, Gimli. Just carry that.
Gimli, hold that. Oh, I'm getting
He'll
weak.
be all right.
I'm getting weak, but weirdly I'm getting strong.
He just gets more desperate. It's the adrenaline. That's what it is, isn't it? With Gimli, the more you damage him, the more angry he gets.
Okay, so quest card number 2.
Quest card number 2. So this is Through the Caverns. Finding a hidden entrance to the dungeons of Dol Guldur at last, you attempt to make your way through the caverns beneath the hill, searching for your imprisoned friend. The denizens of this labyrinth stand in your way, while the jailers protect the prisoner. So then you flip it over, and straight away you'll notice it has 15 progress required. Response. After placing any number of progress tokens on this card, flip the prisoner hero card face up and place 1 damage token on it. This hero has been rescued and may now be used by its controller. The players as a group still cannot play more than 1 ally card each round. Players cannot advance to the next stage of this quest unless they have rescued the prisoner and have all 3 Escape from Dol Guldur objective cards.
Okay, there's a lot going on here. So just before we dissect this, I'm going to jump right in with my main beef.
Okay.
And then I can just put it to rest because this gets my back up with this quest. And I think, I have to be pretty hard pushed to say anything negative about Lord of the Rings, the card game. I mean, I love this game and I love what the designers do. But I think with this quest particularly, there's a few things which just don't add up. And the main one for me is that whilst you are going through the caverns looking for your prisoner, it's still perfectly possible to travel to the mountains of Mirkwood. It's also perfectly possible to travel to the Great Forest Web. And this just doesn't make any sense to me thematically. It's like I'm going through the caverns, I'm looking for a prisoner. Oh, I'm up a mountain. And I think it's very rare, actually, and this is a big compliment to the game designers. It's very rare in this game that sort of situation occurs. Nearly always the locations of how you travel through each quest are very thematic, and it does continue to work no matter which stage you're at. But with this one particularly, it just takes me out of the whole experience. And with that in mind, I find that whenever I play this quest, I treat it much more like a puzzle that needs to be solved rather than a thematic experience, which is a shame because that's what I really love about this game. But then sometimes, that's just the way it is, I guess. Sometimes you just have to solve it. and not worry too much of the fact that you're deep in the caverns of a tower and now you're up a mountain.
Yeah, I think that's probably a fair point. So I think the locations which do come in that Dol Guldur set are fine.
Yeah, they work. Yeah, because I
They
think
work.
there's a tower gate or something is in there.
I think the only other one is Endless Caverns.
That's right, and that of course that it completely works. That's exactly right. But it's
I think there are 4 other locations in here, and I'm just trying to see if I can find an excuse for each of them. Because I didn't really... Yeah, you're right. There is something a bit odd about being in a dungeon and then suddenly going to the mountains of Mirkwood.
Or there's the enchanted stream, which I can sort of... Maybe there's a stream that's running through the caverns. That could work. But yeah, no.
Yeah.
But, and like I say, I'm nitpicking, but that's only as a compliment to how well the designers do in, I would say, 90% of all the other quests, where the theme runs through it perfectly. And in this one, it's kind of like, they won't notice. But I did notice.
Yeah, there's Enchanted Stream, Necromancer's Pass, which is kind of Dol Guldur, so you can kind of make a thing for that. I guess, yeah, for the 2 you mentioned, I think are the 2 you're talking about, so it's Mountains of Mirkwood. The ones you mentioned are the ones you're talking about. Just want to make that clear. So one is the Mountains of Mirkwood, the other one was Great Forest Web, yeah. So you're not really going to be in a mountain or a forest when you're in the dungeon.
It just bothers me slightly, but I've got it off my chest now. So let's continue.
Okay. So rescuing a prisoner is obviously great. Now, here's where the Nazgul wording comes into play. So the second you put 1 progress token or more on the quest card 2B through the caverns, the Nazgul of Dol Guldur comes into the staging area.
Yeah, and they could have easily put that on the quest card.
Well, they should have, really. But that's what you alluded to earlier.
Yeah.
Okay, so generally what's happening here then is, great, you've got another hero. And just to contradict Tina Turner, you do need another hero at this point. But what you don't need is the Nazgul of Dol Guldur, who does come to the staging area. And the Nazgul's a pretty nasty character.
He really is. Oof.
Is it worth just going?
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it. Yeah.
So the important thing to remember, he's got an engagement cost of 40.
That's pretty high.
That's pretty high. So there's still scope to manage this. And I think we had to utilise this a fair bit to get rid of him, didn't we?
Oh, yeah. You do not want to be engaging this guy if possible.
Yeah, for various reasons. However, one reason to engage him, he has a threat of 5.
I changed my mind. You want to engage this guy as soon as possible.
There's no easy answers. You've turned into Gollum again. And then he hits for 4, defends for 3, and has got 9, a whopping 9 hit points.
Yeesh.
No attachments can be played, so you can't, forest snare or
Can't
whatever.
snare
like
the
that.
Nazgul.
Forced, when the prisoner is rescued, move Nazgul into the staging area. Fine, we discussed that. The other forced effect on him, though, is after a shadow effect dealt to the Nazgul of Dol Guldur resolves, the engaged player must choose and discard 1 character he controls. So it's just by the fact that a shadow has resolved, you're losing a character. Nasty business.
Yeah, and that's a character. So if you've got no allies left, that's your heroes. They're going one by one.
Yeah. So when you do engage this guy, I guess there's various things. I guess there's various tactics, I guess, which we used.
Yeah, I think we mostly tried to spam him with Gandalf, didn't we?
Yeah, that was our general thing, wasn't it? So you can add 4 damage. So if you can sneak attack Gandalf, then you can whack 4 on. In fact, I think both times we did it together, we ended up killing him with a Gondorian spearman after double Gandalf spamming him. So he ended up with 8. Then we engaged him, and he attacked the spearman, and then it's your favourite, your favourite one. 1 damage immediately onto Nazgul, and he's gone. I think we did that twice, didn't we?
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't we? It's just so glorious. Yeah, but of course, if you are unlucky enough to be engaged with, or engaged to a Nazgul, not engaged with the Nazgul.
Maybe in a much nicer outside of work context.
Oh,
Very chilled out at home.
I've heard that excuse before, but we all know the truth. But if you happen to be engaged with this guy, you want to be doing everything in your power to stop shadow cards from resolving. So that could be cancellation or simply just trying to kill him before you see those shadow cards. I mean, yeah, you just can't afford to be using luck, although luck does come into it, but you can't rely on that. And you also can't afford to be losing characters every time he attacks.
I guess another way, and something which I did sort of playing solo, is if you can cancel shadows, then it's not going to resolve that shadow, which means you don't lose a character. Still need a way to defeat this Nazgul pretty quickly once it is engaged, so you probably want a souped up Gimli or enough people who can attack him at the same time, because he's got 3 shield and 9 hit points, so it's not an easy one to overcome.
Yeah, and just a point there you made on the cancelling of shadow cards. It's exactly what I just said.
Is it?
Yeah. Glad to know you're paying attention.
I thought you said you couldn't be affording to lose characters every time.
I did say that as well. Okay.
Okay. All right. Basically, what we're saying is cancelling shadow effects is good.
Oh, if you can cancel the shadow effects, that would also be a good tactic.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't think of that earlier. Okay, so you've got a Nazgul up there. Probably best to try and keep him in the staging area if you can quest enough, because that's what you were alluding to earlier with that 5 threat up there in the staging area. If you haven't got a grip of what's going on up there, you're going to get yourself in trouble. You could easily get yourself, find yourself threatening out if you're not careful.
Yeah, totally.
So, the Nazgul, defeat it as soon as possible. And then, I guess, the main tactic then is to make sure you have enough threat left in the bank to be able to claim those objectives and then move on as soon as possible.
This is another thing that makes it harder for one player as well. Because once you claim all 3 of these objectives, that's 6 threat you got to put to one player. At least if you're playing 2 player, you can spread it around a bit. So 4 for one, 2 for the other. Obviously not possible with on a 1 player game.
I mean, actually, this is a game which gets increasingly easier the more players that you have. I mean, if you had a 3 or 4 player game...
Yeah, totally, yeah.
It really wouldn't be a problem, especially it wouldn't be a problem to lose one hero at the beginning, and it certainly wouldn't be a problem to spread that threat increase out.
Can you do 3 and 4 player games?
Yeah, you need 2 core sets.
Okay. All right. Okay, so to get through this quest card, you don't actually need to defeat the Nazgul at this point, but I think we found that it's better just to get rid of this guy as soon as possible for the reason you just said. He's either causing you 5 threat in the staging area or he's engaged you and he's really nasty. But what you do need to do is claim all 3 of these cards, and once you've done that and got your 15 progress, then you move on to the final card. Did you have anything more to add to the caverns?
No.
So the last card is Out of the Dungeons.
Via the Mountains of Mirkwood.
You could do. My geography's not great, so... Following a thread of sunlight, you discover a cavern opening leading out through the side of the hill. Stationed outside the cave mouth, however, is a large group of orcs. So you flip the card over. Just need the 7 to get through this. Forced. At the beginning of each quest phase, each player places the top card of his deck face down in front of him, as if it just engaged him from the staging area. These cards are called Orc Guard and act as enemies with 1 hit point, who hit for 1 and got 1 shield. Players cannot defeat the stage while Nazgul of Dol Guldur is in play. If this stage is defeated and Nazgul is not in play, the players have won the game.
Yeah, a lot going on again, eh?
Yeah, so let's come to those orcs in a second. One thing which I do kind of like thematically here is you've escaped, essentially you got out of a dungeon, you just got to get past these nasty orcs. And to get out of the dungeon, you had to use these objectives. You had to use the map, you had to use the torch, and you had to use a key somewhere. But once you're out, you don't need these anymore.
Yeah.
So you don't need to still have these objectives to complete the quest.
That's a good point.
Because the reason I know this is because, or the reason it came to my mind rather, was when I was playing this one player, and one of those couple of occasions I did somehow manage to get to this last card. I was thinking, how am I going to? Because I was about to go to threat 50 on both occasions. That's how I ended up losing both times. Just didn't have enough time. I then thought, well, actually, can I just get rid of these? So I looked up, how can you just discard an attachment if you don't want it anymore? And actually, I don't think you can. I think if you have a restricted attachment, you have to fill up with 2 and then play another one, and then you can choose to get rid of 1.
Yeah, that's the only way. Well, I mean, there you can get rid of condition attachments with the Mine of the Iron Hills, of course, but I don't think these class as conditions.
No, these are just normal attachments, aren't they? But just something to bear in mind there, if you do have a way to get rid of one of these, and 1, it means you're going to get a different attachment, might be more useful to you. But 2, obviously, you'll then lose the negative effects of these, i.e., whoever's got Gandalf's map can attack or defend, for example, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's very valid, yeah.
The big one is raising your threat by an additional 2 with a dungeon torch. So you're going up 3 every time.
Why would you still be holding a torch? Yeah. You're absolutely right.
But you have to, unless you can play something else.
I can't drop it. Put it down. I can't. Just put it down. I can't.
We might need it. It might be useful. Here, take this citadel plate.
We are literally out of the dungeons. Oh, I can't do it. No. I like this torch. Yeah, but see, you've got me going again about the theme on this one.
But I like the theme. I like the theme.
Well, you like the theme that you can get rid of them now, but the theme that you haven't is.
But that's more to do with the.
That's more to do with the mechanics,
of the games, isn't it? So it's like a challenge, it's just something to bear in mind. You can get rid of these if you've got other attachments, and they can help you out.
Yeah.
However, what you do have to do is ensure that you've defeated the Nazgul. So hopefully you've done that already, but if not, you've got to do it here.
Highly recommend just getting rid of him during stage 2. Don't let him hang around.
Having said that as well, though, I totally agree. When we played the second time, we finished the encounter deck right on this last card. If we had, basically we had to shuffle the Nazgul back. Luckily, we had Denethor who could check it, but it could have been a case that we ended up with a Nazgul again. So if you do kill him early and you're getting through the cards on the encounter deck, there is that chance as well you could get him again, but it's definitely worth taking the risk, I think.
For sure. And I think we lamented several times that why doesn't the Nazgul have victory points, that he doesn't go to the victory display, so he does get shuffled back into the encounter deck. But actually, I think we came to the conclusion that does make thematic sense. We aren't actually killing the Nazgul. We're just fending him off, and then it's quite possible that he's just going to come back.
You can't kill Nazgul, and there's 7 of them anyway.
True.
9.
More true.
Okay, so I guess the last thing just to bear in mind on this one is that both times we won this, we just did a huge quest because we'd killed the Nazgul already and just got through this straight away. That's what we did.
This third quest card did not cause us any problems on either time, and I think what did we quest for on that last attempt?
20 something, wasn't it? Something ludicrous. But if you're not in that position, which is likely as well, I guess, then you have to deal with these Orc Guards. And that's similar to one of the locations that you can get in here as well. Is it the Tower Gate, is it?
Yeah, Tower Gate also creates Orc Guards.
Yeah, which is a similar thing.
But the Orc Guards, I mean, they're not that difficult. Just a reminder, you need to take the top card of your deck and put it face down in front of you, and then that becomes an enemy where you have to just sort of remember that it's 1/1/1 basically, 1 defense, 1 hit, and 1 attack. They're not difficult to get past, of course, but it is just another enemy you have to knock off. I think the worst part about it is it's taking cards from your deck that you may well need.
Yeah, agreed. They can cause a problem. I mean, this definitely caused me a problem playing one player where I was struggling to. I'm trying to remember the exact situation now, but I was struggling to get that much questing for whatever reason. I think I was decimated from a whole bunch of battles. I was always on the edge, you know. And then actually, after a couple of rounds on this, I think I threatened out in the end anyway. But I think these guys actually did cause me a problem because I couldn't get rid of all the enemies I had. So it's just an additional attack with a shadow you're going to get every time unless you can take them out.
Yeah, you just need to be able to weather the storm and plow through this. I mean, I think actually this quest gets easier the more you get through it. I mean, that initial quest card is pretty tough, you know, because of all the things that the encounter deck can throw at you straight off the bat. That second quest card is particularly nasty. It's balanced slightly because you get your last hero back, but then you get the Nazgul. I think the third one, if you have got to the third card, you should be able to get past it without too much trouble. But I'm talking 2-player.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 2-player. That's right.
Yeah. So I mean, this is difficult for me because, like I say, I don't like to ever say anything negative about this game because it really, I think it's wonderful and I love it and it's such an important part of my life.
I sense a but.
Yeah.
I like this quest. But go on.
I just don't think this quest is very well thought out. I think it's, and this is not to do with the difficulty. We've talked about that ad nauseum, and as you know, we've beaten it 3 for 3 together. So actually, the difficulty is not a problem for us. Also, it seems. I just think it's not very interesting, and I think there are way too many additional mechanics on every single quest card. I think it becomes overcomplicated, especially for new players, that there's reams and reams of text on every quest card, on every objective. I think the quest itself doesn't warrant this much complexity. The rewards don't equal the sorry, my cat just jumped up onto the hello boy. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm being a bit too harsh, but yeah, it's just my opinion, and I have to be honest.
Fair enough. I quite like the fact that it's complex, just in the same way that, as we discussed earlier, the second quest, Journey Along the Anduin, suddenly presents this huge challenge about how you actually defeat it. This one presents a challenge in what you're saying, and there's so much going on in all these different cards. It makes you, and this is something I've banged on about before, always read the cards, be aware of what's on the cards. And I say that a lot because I'm the person who's the most guilty of not doing that. That's why I make the point.
Yeah, but that's true. But it shouldn't be a chore, though, should it?
I don't really find it a chore. I found playing this quest just makes, or especially before I really learnt what the quest was all about, it just makes you get into that mindset of managing it and not being overwhelmed and making sure you are aware of what's happening with each card and think, oh God, I actually know if I do that, I didn't think of this, and how am I going to claim that objective actually? I haven't got anyone to do it. And it's all of that kind of thinking. Because I think once you've played this a couple of times, and you only have to play it a couple of times to really get there, then I think when you do, and we'll come to this obviously in future episodes, when you start doing the next cycle, you don't really see anything quite as complex as this, maybe, or maybe you do. Maybe I'm not remembering correctly, but it doesn't stick in my mind because I think this kind of gets you used to it.
Yeah, I think it beats you down. No, but I do understand what you're saying. But I think as you go into the next cycle, there are new mechanics and they are interesting. I think they just streamline it. I think they learn what bits to add and when. And I think this one, they just went, okay, this is the introductory quest. This is the sort of tougher thematic quest. And now here's everything else. And yeah, for me, it just misses the mark slightly.
Fair enough. And you've, I guess, got more experience of the future quests as well to compare that.
That's
against.
true. I mean, it's maybe not fair to talk in hindsight about it, But
Well, no, I think I think that's fine. That's fair, because I think we'll have probably people listening to this as well who are kind of revisiting rather than playing for. It's not only going to be first time people. I think
no,
so.
absolutely, yeah.
So I think that's fair. That's a fair comment. I think. Did we want to discuss any of the other cards?
Well, to be honest,
There's only a couple.
Yeah, I mean, if there's anything you want to go over, that's fine with me. I mean, like I said before, for me, the encounter cards that we haven't yet seen in this deck weren't really the trouble. I mean, there's one particularly nasty guy, the Dungeon Jailer. I don't know if that was someone you were gonna bring up.
That was the one I was going to mention.
All right, well let's have a word with the Jailer, shall we?
So the Jailer has an engagement cost of 38, only one threat, hits for 2, 3 shield, 5 hit points. So he gets nastier as you go down.
Yeah,
Quite difficult to sort of take down. Is a Dol Guldur Orc. Forced. If Dungeon Jailer is in the staging area after the players have just quested unsuccessfully, shuffle 1 unclaimed objective card from the staging area back into the encounter deck. So if you've got Gandalf's Map or Shadow Key or Dungeon Torture or 2 of them or all 3 of them in the staging area, and you do quest unsuccessfully, and this guy's also in the staging area, one of those is disappearing into the encounter deck.
it's so nasty.
Yeah, that can be really, that can put the kibosh on your whole quest if you're not lucky.
Yeah, if the Dungeon Jailer is in the staging area, you've got to either engage him as soon as possible or find a way to get rid of him, or just make sure you quest successfully, but you never really know.
Agreed. So yeah, just one to bear in mind.
Yeah, I think that was the only one I really highlighted, because actually I think it's all the other nasties that we've mentioned in the last 2 episodes which are the ones that really come and get you. I mean, there's some real favourites in there. Okay, well, I don't really have that much more to say about this quest, but well done. We got through all the core quests.
Yes, we did, and a great introduction to the game.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, well, if you don't have anything more to add on that, I think we'll move on to our fact of the week.
Okay.
Yeah. Still don't have a jingle there. Okay, so our fact of the week is the moment where we go through the FAQ in order and see if there's anything that causes any discussion or any questions, or whether or not it's all clear and all makes sense. So this week, the fact of the week. Question: when do, and this is in quotes, after this enemy attacks, forced effects like those on Chieftain Uftak and Wargs resolve? And the answer to that is these effects resolve immediately after step 4 of enemy attack resolution. Okay, well, that sounds like a very legal way of saying when they...
what does that mean?
when they resolve. Step 4 of enemy attack resolution is, I believe, and I'm going by memory here, is placing damage tokens on your defender or hero if it's undefended. I will look that up afterwards, but I'm almost certain that's stage 4 of enemy attack resolution.
Ah, so after. Okay. Right. So yeah, that wording's quite. I see why it's in the fact now. So I think yet again, I've been playing this wrong. So for me, the way I've always read this is, so I've got Chieftain Uftak here in front of me.
Yeah.
The card.
Lucky you.
Yeah. Otherwise, I'd have to put a resource token on the bloke after he's. All right. He's saying. So he's not saying anything. What it says on his card is forced after Chieftain Uftak attacks, place 1 resource token on him. Now, I didn't see that as he attacks, you resolve his attack, so his attack is over. Therefore, that is now after he's attacked.
Yeah.
I just saw that as the second he attacks, then yes, after he attacks, therefore do it at that point.
That would be when this enemy
as
attacks.
he attacks.
When?
When.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but that's important for Chieftain
Yeah.
Uftak, because then that means that resource token which gives him extra attack wouldn't actually come into play until the next round.
Oh no, okay, I have been playing it right then.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I think-
Okay. So
and the wargs would be, I think, after they attack, they go back to the staging area if they were dealt a shadow. If they're dealt a shadow without a shadow effect, then they go back to the staging area after they attack. So basically, they take a chunk out of you, you place your damage tokens, and then they go back to the staging area.
right.
So, I mean, yeah, I guess it does need clarification, but I think, I guess it's there because were people... I guess it must be for chieftain attack that if it was at the point when they attack and you put that token on them, then people were wondering how much he hit for, I guess.
Yeah. So I like I said, I interpreted this both ways. I thought after he attacks meant literally the moment he attacks, but I still wasn't placing resource on him because I thought obviously it's going to be after every sort of attack round. So yeah, it's good to clarify, I guess. But
yeah, and I think what's important with the wargs, and I think I did mention this actually last episode, after you reveal the shadow card, but before you put on the hit points, you can actually still play actions. So you could at that point sneak in Gandalf and kill him at that point, but you can't play actions after you place the damage tokens because it goes on to the next phase at that point. So what would happen is that you would place the damage tokens. Sorry, it wouldn't go on to the next phase. It would go on to it would still be the it would still be the combat phase, but it would be now your turn to attack. And I don't think you can play actions at that point. So basically,
I think you can.
No, I don't think you can at the end of step 4 of the enemy attack resolution.
I don't know what step 4 is.
Step 4 is placing tokens. Okay? So you place the tokens.
Yeah.
You can't play an action until that has been resolved. So as this fact says, these effects resolve immediately after step 4. So you place the tokens, then the wargs go back to the staging area. So you can't sneak attack Gandalf in then. He's already gone. But you could do it before.
Yeah. Or sneak attack anyone.
Yeah, sneak attack anyone. Well, yeah. But Gandalf would be the only way to kill him. Yeah, it does need a bit of clarification. I don't think it's one to lose too much sleep over.
No, I agree, yeah.
Alrighty, so it's time for the regular part of the show where we like to share the love and discuss some other sort of online resources for Lord of the Rings, the card game, which are out there on the World Wide Web. And this week, I'm going to discuss about my love of old maps, because I love maps in general, and I love the maps of Middle-earth. I mean, I just think the original Lord of the Rings atlas that was created, and I mean Tolkien's original map, of course, it's just a thing of beauty. There is a blog called Master of Lore, and I'm not too sure if it's active anymore, but it does still exist. You can still find it, but I don't know if the creators of it are actually writing the blog anymore. But there is a section of this which is just glorious, and that is the LOTR LCG Atlas. Now, it's not completely up to date. I think they got as far as Heirs of Numenor Deluxe Box, but basically they have taken the Atlas of Middle-earth and broken it down to every quest up until the Heirs of Numenor, and you can explore the maps, and whilst clicking on locations on the maps, it will bring up the encounter cards and the quest cards of the locations in which the game is taking you to. And it's such a nice, pleasant way to explore the locations. And if you're into the theme of the game and you want to sort of get an understanding of the locations that you're going towards and where these quests are set, it's so nicely made. I highly recommend you take a look at it. I mean, it's a bit of a shame that it's not for the full game, but I imagine it was a hell of a lot of work. So I think we just need to be grateful that there is some of it there, because it really is a nice thing. I don't have a website address for it. I mean, Google it and I'll put it into the show notes.
Yeah, I've never seen this before. So as you were just discussing it, I've just been looking through it. Yeah, it looks pretty amazing, actually. You can just Google Master of Law, and it's the first thing that comes up on a Google search. So should be easy to find.
And where do I find Google?
That I don't know, I'm afraid.
I'll Bing it.
Yeah, yeah. Just do search for it. It's fine.
Okay, so that's my online recommendation for the week. Okay, I think that's pretty much wraps everything up for this episode. We are actually going to take a little bit of time off, so there'll be a bit of a break now before the next episode. It'll give us a bit of time just to gather our thoughts, play a bit more of the game, and just take a bit of a breather. But don't worry, we will be back. And when we come back, we'll be playing the first AP in the first cycle, which is Hunt for Gollum. So if you are playing along with us, that's the one you want to be getting refreshed on. Ready for that next episode.
Refreshed or readied?
Either or.
I still can't figure it out.
So there are a few ways you can get in touch with us. We have a Twitter account, which is @LateOfTheRings. You can get in touch directly via email at lateofTheRings@gmail.com. And we have a Board Game Geek thread, which I'll put a link to in the show notes. So with that, I would just say thanks once again for listening, and take care out there. Until next time.
Bye.